June 26, 1876. Hidden in a blood-soaked creek bed, an Italian aristocrat watches a nightmare unfold. 50 yards away, Sioux warriors scalp a still-breathing soldier. The knife glints. The screams choke into silence. And Lieutenant Charles DiRudio, a man who traded palaces for cavalry forts, realizes he's trapped in hell. This is Little Bighorn, but not the battle you know. While Custer's companies are massacred, DeRudio fights alone, dodging 300 warriors, crawling through wildfire, even mistaking enemies for rescuers. For 36 hours, the man called Count No Account defies annihilation. Tonight, you witness history through his eyes. The scalping parties, the bullet that missed by inches, the flames that spared him. How did the Army's most mocked aristocrat become its most miraculous survivor? This is the story scalped from history's shadow. But before we begin, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel to support our community. Charles Derudio, an Italian nobleman and professional U.S. Army officer, served with the 7th U.S. Cavalry during the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Captain Frederick Benteen nicknamed him Count No Account because of his arrogant demeanor and penchant for boastful tales. Derudio was a competent officer, advanced to first lieutenant on December 15, 1875, and favored by Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer and other high-ranking commanders. He survived the Little Bighorn battle and subsequently composed a letter detailing his experiences. I barely avoided death at the Battle of the Little Bighorn on June 25th and 26th, and now relate my terrifying personal story of this monumental clash. Near 10 a.m. on June 25th, scouts serving General Custer returned bearing alarming intelligence. They had located an Indian encampment roughly 15 miles distant, situated beside the Little Bighorn River. The scouts reported the Indians seemed to be withdrawing before our approaching troops. We marched an additional 2 or 3 miles before General Custer paused to plan our attack. He detailed Companies H, D, and K under Colonel F.W. Benteen to secure our left flank, commanding them to sweep all opposition from their route. Companies M and G, led by Colonel Reno, and where I was then assigned to Company A, occupied the center position. General Custer personally commanded Companies E, I, F, L, and C on the attack's right wing, while Company B stayed to protect the pack train. Advancing several more miles, our central unit received orders to trot and sustain speed until reaching the river about 6 or 7 miles ahead. Having crossed the river, we came out onto the open plains beyond and were directed to form a battle line. Orders issued, we charged forward, chasing the foe through a thick, vision-obscuring dust cloud kicked up by the retreating Indians. The dust proved so intense, sight was nearly impossible, forcing Colonel Reno to halt our advance. After dismounting, Colonel Reno rapidly established a skirmish line, anchoring its right flank on a dry, thickly wooded creek bank. While horses were taken for cover in the timber, the Indians commenced a savage attack, which we countered instantly with gunfire. The skirmish persisted around 30 minutes. It was then revealed that beyond the creek, within a meadow-like expanse, stood several lodges. Our complete formation crossed the creek, only to discover the lodges vacant, confronting instead roughly 200 shrieking, yelling braves. The intense fire from this superior contingent rendered retreat almost unattainable as we became encircled. Engaging the conflict with merely 100 soldiers, the persistent enemy fire devastated our limited numbers. While crossing the creek, I, stationed at the rear, spotted an abandoned guidon and returned to recover it. Moving through the timber, the guidon snagged on branches and fell from my hand. Dismounting to retrieve it, I guided my horse to the creek's southern bank. Just as I prepared to remount, a bullet hit my horse, startling it into bolting directly into the Indian lines, leaving me afoot with some 300 Sioux warriors barely 50 yards distant. They discharged a whistling volley towards me, yet by some miracle I was untouched. I succeeded in fleeing to a nearby thicket where I could protect myself and bargain for survival. Inside the thicket I met Fred Gerard, the interpreter, and Private Thomas F. O'Neill of Company G, 7th Cavalry. Gerard and O'Neill possessed their mounts, while I, similar to O'Neill, was horseless. I proposed that retaining the horses might reveal our location and advised driving them off, but they refused. Departing their company, I crawled through heavy brush into the deep, dry creek bed, intending to remain concealed until nightfall permitted me to slip back and rejoin the command. After roughly 10 anxious minutes in my refuge, I detected multiple pistol shots discharged close by, succeeded by the chilling voices of several squaws. Warily lifting my head, I witnessed these women partaking in the grisly task of scalping a soldier who may yet have been living. 2 were absorbed in the cutting, while others enacted a victory dance around the victim and his mutilators. The repugnance of this abhorrent scene defies description. Eventually, the women departed, presumably seeking additional victims, affording me an instant to ponder my perilous state. While wrestling with my thoughts, I perceived a crackling sound nearby. Upon examination, I ascertained it emanated from flaming wood the Indians had ignited. The extremely dry timber caused the flames to advance rapidly, compelling me to leave my refuge in the creek. I crawled from the creek bed, using my prior path. Just as I prepared to ascend the bank, I heard a voice calling, "Lieutenant! Lieutenant!" Though I saw no one, the summons continued. Proceeding a few yards toward the sound, I located the entire group I had recently departed, hidden in the creek bottom. Mr. Gerard explained he had abandoned the horses, tied together where I last saw them, and descended after me. Like me, the group was alarmed by the approaching flames. Thankfully, the wind diminished and a light rain descended, sufficient to check the fire and revive our hope of staying concealed until dark. It was now 3 p.m., leaving 6 long hours to endure. Throughout this period, we could hear and sometimes spot Indians nearby, their war cries unnervingly proximate. Articulating the multitude of thoughts traversing my mind during those suspenseful hours is challenging. Finally, night arrived, the sky densely overcast, offering the concealment we required. We could now exit our hiding places and proceed toward the ford, situated 2 miles south across open terrain. Mr. Gerard and the scout rode their horses, while the soldier and I each clutched a horse's tail. Following them through the blackness, Mr. Gerard proposed that if flight forced him to abandon us, he would inform Colonel Reno of our position, guaranteeing rescue. Crossing the open plain, the night proved so dark visibility was minimal, yet we heard Indians returning to their village. Reaching timber near where we assumed lay the ford cross that morning, we recognized our error and had to seek the proper crossing. After fording the stream once, we found ourselves at a bend, requiring a second crossing. While recrossing the river, we suddenly confronted 8 warriors. The 2 mounted men instantly fled, while the soldier and I plunged into adjacent brush. I cocked my revolver, kneeling poised to shoot if the warriors neared. Astonishingly, they apparently believed we had all escaped, and after conferring briefly among themselves for several fraught minutes, proceeded onward. Relieved, I signaled to the soldier, and we rejoined. Recognizing that all crossings were heavily guarded, trying to ford the river appeared suicidal. The night wore on interminably, and at daybreak we discerned noises resembling a sizable cavalry force advancing, accompanied by the distinct splash of horses traversing water. Cautiously nearing the riverbank, I observed what looked like our apparent command. Gray mounts ridden by figures in military-style blouses, some wearing pale hats. From my position, I witnessed them exiting the valley, some troops ascending a steep bluff, while others continued crossing the river. This vision stirred both hope and dread within me, questioning whether we'd finally found deliverance. I noticed a man clad in a buckskin coat, trousers, tall boots, and a white hat, certain it was Captain Tom Custer. Convincing me these horsemen belonged to our unit. Certain, I confidently stepped onto the bank and shouted, "Tom, don't leave us here!" The distance was mere yards, yet my call was answered by a chilling war whoop and a devastating hail of 300 or 400 shots. Only then did I grasp my grievous mistake. The warriors wore garments and rode steeds captured from our fallen. The soldier and I instantly plunged into the brush as bullets clipped foliage with every volley. We crawled away to evade their fire, disturbing the upper growth, provoking Indians on the bluff to shoot toward us. We resolved to traverse an open patch of roughly 20 yards to gain another wooded stretch. Before moving, I prudently scanned our environs. The prospect was profoundly discouraging. On our immediate right, scarcely 50 yards off, I saw 4 or 5 Indians, swiftly closing in. Near me stood 2 adjacent cottonwood remnants almost touching. Behind this improvised barrier, the soldier and I knelt. He clutched his rifle while I grasped my pistol, ready to fell several warriors before they struck. They hadn't spotted us, and when the foremost man was only 10 yards off, I fired. They advanced single file. Upon my shot, they wheeled abruptly, making a rapid departure. Private O'Neill next discharged his carbine at the second warrior, who was just then tugging his pony to turn it back. The private's aim proved accurate, and his weapon dependable, as the Native American released his reins, lifted his hands, and lay upon the grass for his final rest. The individual I had first addressed rode a short way, and then followed suit. The remaining riders proceeded, rounded the wood's corner, and disappeared. Throughout this time, gunfire from the bluffs continued, yet after our shots it halted, and we withdrew to the thicket. From our vantage we observed Indians on the bluffs, their horses secured beneath the hill's shelter, and a line of marksmen lying prone on their fronts. The clamor of battle echoed from the heights above, the steady rattle of musketry, the shouts of our comrades, and the shots of the Native Americans. Our spirits soared, recognizing the familiar cheer of our friends, but dismay swiftly followed, seeing our woodland sanctuary aflame, compelling relocation. We crawled almost to the wood's edge when we perceived foes had ignited both flanks. We worked our way until discovering a dense cluster of so-called mulberry trees under which we crept. The grass bordering the spot was very green, dampened by a recent drizzle, with no wind. As the fire neared our hideout, it advanced very sluggishly, enabling me to extinguish it using my gauntlets. The blaze encircling us had subsided, leaving a small, secure zone. We were enclosed by fire, yet it shielded us from the exterior. We could observe everything without being seen. We watched Native Americans moving about, and one sentry some 70 to 80 yards distant, observing the fire. At 4 p.m., he fired 4 shots skyward, which I took for a signal. Then we heard a Native American shouting loudly, repeating the identical cry 4 times. Following these signals, we witnessed over 200 Native Americans departing the area and fording the river. An hour later, the same signals repeated, and numerous more rode off mounted. Soon the remainder also left. We felt hopeful, and the constant shooting diminished, with only sporadic distant shots audible. By 6 p.m., everything around seemed tranquil, with no signs of Native Americans nearby. We believed the regiment had quit the battleground, needing only to await nightfall to ford the river and proceed toward the Yellowstone River. There we intended to construct a raft and drift down to the Powder River, site of our supply depot. We had endured 36 hours without sustenance or water. At 8 p.m., we waded into the river, forded it twice, and ascended the bluffs, cautiously determining our course. We advanced slowly and warily, traversing 2 miles before I scaled a high hill to survey the surroundings and seek indications of our command. I observed a fire roughly 2 miles distant, toward where we believed our forces had been fighting. We questioned whether it was a Native American encampment or our own troops. We resolved to approach carefully and investigate. We descended the hill and proceeded toward the fire, climbing elevations and halting to listen, advancing over a mile. Upon reaching the hill's summit, we paused and listened once more. We detected voices, too indistinct to identify as Native Americans or our command. We edged nearer and heard a mule bray, succeeded by the age-old challenge, "Halt! Who goes there?" The challenge wasn't directed at us, being too far off and concealed by darkness. Yet it emboldened us to keep advancing cautiously, still fearing an encounter with Indians. We were approximately 200 yards from the fire when I yelled, "Picket! Don't fire! It's Lieutenant DiRudio and Private O'Neill," and began running toward them. Our announcement prompted a loud cheer from the picket and Lieutenant Varnum. Lieutenant Varnum, a valiant and proficient officer, approached me, overjoyed to find me alive, as he had presumed me among the fallen. I inquired about the regiment's condition, hoping we were the only losses, but that hope was fleeting. Lieutenant Varnum informed me he had no tidings concerning the 5 companies under Custer, and that our command had lost Lieutenants McIntosh and Hodgson. I reached camp around 2 a.m. and couldn't sleep, despite profound exhaustion from 2 sleepless nights. I conversed with Lieutenant Varnum about the engagement, recounting my narrow escapes and exploits. Morning arrived quickly, and I conferred with the officers to report the Native Americans' departure. At 8 a.m., we observed cavalry approaching, first several scouts, then a substantial column. We soon recognized it as General Brisbane's command arriving to reinforce us. Later, a lengthy infantry line materialized on the plain, and General Gibbon reached us. Witnessing those blue uniforms stirred profound emotion within us. When Generals Gibbon and Terry entered our encampment, hardened men wept like infants. I must recognize Private O'Neill's steadfast allegiance and valor. He obeyed my directives and remained steadfast as kin throughout. I shall forever remember him and his indispensable aid during our perilous ordeal together. This valiant soldier is esteemed by his company commander and shall eternally possess my thankfulness and that of my comrades. Charles C. DiRudio.